It's the longest-running gang war in California history, thousands of lives, decades of bloodshed. And it all comes down to geography, north versus south. This is the war between the Norteños and the Sureños, a war that started in California's prisons and spilled onto the streets, leaving a trail of bodies from San Diego to Sacramento. But to understand this war, you have to go back to the beginning. In the late 1960s, inside California's San Quentin state prison, a group of Mexican-American inmates felt they were being abused and manipulated by a prison gang called the Mexican Mafia, also known as La M. The Mexican Mafia was powerful, ruthless, and based in Southern California. Their control extended over Latino inmates, many of whom came from small barrios across the state. But not everyone was willing to bow. A group of Northern California inmates, primarily farm workers from the Central Valley, broke away. They formed their own identity, rejecting the authority of the Mexican Mafia. They called themselves Norteños, Spanish for Northerners. Their symbol was the number 14, representing the 14th letter of the alphabet, N for Norte. They wore red. They developed their own structure, language, and codes, and the Mexican Mafia, they responded in blood. To fight the defiance, La M created its own army of street soldiers loyal to Southern California. These were the Sureños, or Southerners. Their symbol, 13, the 13th letter, M for La M. Their color, blue. What started as a prison dispute over respect and control quickly became a war between two entire regions of California. Inside prison walls, lines were drawn. Northern inmates stuck together. Southern inmates did the same. One wrong word, one wrong tattoo, one wrong housing assignment, and you were dead. The conflict extended far beyond racial lines. It was cultural, territorial, deep. In the 1980s and 1990s, as both gangs exploded in numbers, the violence erupted across California's neighborhoods. In Los Angeles, Sureño sets controlled entire blocks, working under the umbrella of La M. In the Central Valley, Norteños recruited in schools, claiming turf in cities like Modesto, Fresno, and Salinas. Drive-by shootings, ambushes, stabbings. The violence didn't just stay behind bars. Sureños began to tax local gangs, extort businesses, and coordinate drug sales under La M's orders. Norteños created their own political structure, loyal to Nuestra Familia, a prison gang formed as the Norteños' leadership class. And like their rivals, the Nuestra Familia operated from maximum security cells. They issued directives, handled discipline, and even wrote political manifestos. Some described the war between Norteños and Sureños as a revolution, a struggle between the oppressed and their former oppressors. But for the average gang member on the street, it was survival. You were either north or south. There was no neutrality. A red hoodie in a blue neighborhood could get you killed. By the mid-1990s, law enforcement finally caught on. The California Department of Corrections began separating inmates based on affiliation. Prison yards were divided, and any crossover resulted in instant violence. Inmates were stabbed in the chow hall, jumped in the showers, killed in the yard. Some of the bloodiest riots in California prison history came from Norteño-Sureño clashes. At Folsom, at Pelican Bay, at High Desert. Sometimes dozens would be injured in a single day. Outside the walls, police began cracking down on Sureño and Norteño street gangs. Operation after operation, RICO charges, sweeps, long sentences. But even with hundreds behind bars, the war continued.
Because prison wasn't a consequence itself for
system. Sureños went in knowing they'd be expected to put in work. Norteños entered ready for war. Both gangs recruited inside, trained soldiers, built loyalty, and behind it all, the real leadership pulled the strings. For the Sureños, it was La Ame, the Mexican mafia, issuing orders through kites, visitors, and coded messages. For the Norteños, it was Nuestra Familia, structured like a military, with generals, lieutenants, and soldiers. They didn't need to speak to control the battlefield. One of the most shocking revelations came from Operation Black Widow, an FBI takedown of Nuestra Familia's leadership in 2001. Agents uncovered hit lists, tax records, internal discipline systems, all orchestrated from inside Pelican Bay's SHU, where top Nuestra Familia members had been held for years. The FBI even flipped key members, including one high-ranking lieutenant, who admits us that they were still running everything from isolation. And yet, even after the operation, the cycle continued. New generations picked up the flag, red or blue, and kept fighting. In cities like Watsonville, Bakersfield, and Stockton, high school kids chose sides. Rap music glorified the Norteño-Sureño divide. Graffiti marked gang borders. Murders went unsolved. And the internet added fuel. Gangs began posting videos, sending threats, flexing weapons. Online beefs turned into real-world killings. Young kids were dying over colors, over numbers, over a war they barely understood. And the prisons still divided. Even in protective custody units like SNI, the politics haven't fully faded. Dropouts face retaliation. Loyalty is questioned. And while California has restructured housing and tried to reduce gang influence, the legacy remains. So where does it end? Some former members say it doesn't. That once you're in for life. That prison gangs use the Norteño-Sureño War to keep control, to maintain their power. Others believe change is possible. Former gang members now run outreach programs helping youth avoid the cycle. Some speak at schools, others mentor inside juvenile halls. But for everyone that leaves, 10 more are waiting to earn stripes. Because in many parts of California, being Norteño or Sureño isn't just a choice. It's a matter of survival. And until the root causes, poverty, racism, incarceration, and trauma are addressed, the war will continue. A war over colors, over pride, over turf. But beneath it all, it's a war over identity. North, South, red, blue, Sureño, Norteño. The line was drawn decades ago. And in many places, it's still soaked in blood. Thanks for watching. If this documentary helped you understand the hidden war shaping California's streets and prisons, subscribe for more in-depth stories on gang culture, prison politics, and the systems behind them. And let us know in the comments. Can the Norteño-Sureño conflict ever be stopped?